The cake sat untouched in the middle of the table. 40 candles flickered like accusing eyes in a courtroom. The guests around me shifted nervously in their chairs. Their forced smiles slipped off like makeup under stage lights. They were watching a show that was about to begin. In my mind, he was already saying the words out loud. Let me introduce Valeria. We've been living together for 7 years. And these are our children, Sofia and Artyom. Those words weren't spoken, but they were loud in my head, so loud it felt like the garden froze from their echo. But then a different voice broke the silence, calm and strange, with that fake politeness I recognized right away. Dear guests, this is my colleague from St. Petersburg, Valeria Kolesnikova, and her children. Someone in the crowd quietly gasped. Even those who didn't know anything felt it. There was no truth in those words. My husband, with whom I had spent 14 years, stood in front of me holding a woman I didn't even know existed. 2 children clung to her feet. They looked at me with wide eyes, as if seeing a strange, unfamiliar world. A heavy silence hung in the garden, the kind you feel just before a storm when everything stops, waiting for the thunder. I looked around at the faces of friends, colleagues, neighbors. Everyone was witnessing my shame. Some knew. I could see it in their lowered eyes. Others looked just as shocked as I felt. But what Dmitri and no one else knew was that I had found out about his betrayal 6 months ago. Tonight wasn't just my birthday celebration. It was Judgment Day. Our eyes met. I smiled. Not a sad or broken smile. Calm. Almost proud. A smile of someone who holds all the cards. How nice of you to finally introduce us, I said, reaching for the knife by the cake. Now, let me introduce you to something of my own. I had it all. Or so everyone said. From the outside, my life sparkled like expensive champagne. A successful career as a lawyer at a big Moscow company. A beautiful country house in Novaya Riga. A handsome husband, often away on business trips for his prestigious job at Westergrup. After many years trying, we accepted that we couldn't have children and learned to enjoy freedom. We traveled the world, had many friends, and didn't worry about money. You're so lucky, my sister Larissa said at our Saturday lunch. Dmitri is a dream. Remember how all my friends were jealous when you got married? I nodded absent-mindedly, picking at my salad. I had already started to notice something was wrong. Dmitri's business trips became more frequent and sometimes lasted longer without warning. At home, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone, leaving the room to take calls. Lisa, hello? Larissa waved her hand in front of my face. Where are you? Just tired from work? I lied. We're working on a big merger deal. But it wasn't about work. It was the growing emptiness in my chest every time Dmitri kissed me goodbye, the way his eyes no longer met mine when he said, I love you. Small details came together to form a picture I wasn't ready to see. After lunch, I took the long way home through our fancy neighborhood. The houses stood proud and perfect, hiding secrets behind their beautiful walls, just like my marriage. When I got to the house, I saw Dmitri's car. Strange, he said he had meetings all day. I entered quietly and heard his voice from the office. I miss you too, darling, he said. Yes, I know. I'll figure something out, I promise. Kiss the kids for me. I froze at the door. Kids? What kids? At that moment, my life split into before and after. I love you, Valeria. More than anything in the world. The words hung in the air like poison ready to strike. I quietly stepped back, went to my car, started the engine with trembling hands, and drove away. Anywhere but here. It started to rain, matching the tears streaming down my face. They say ignorance is bliss, but once the curtain is lifted, there's no going back. For the next week, I acted like the perfect wife while secretly becoming a detective in my own marriage. Dmitri went on another business trip, giving me freedom to search. I started in his office. Nothing obvious. He was too careful. But in the far corner of the filing cabinet, behind old tax papers, I found a folder labeled Real Estate St. Petersburg. We didn't have any property there. Inside were documents for a house bought 6 years ago, under Dmitri's name and a certain Valeria Kolesnikova. There were also mortgage papers, utility bills, and daycare receipts for Sofia and Artyom Kolesnikov. My husband had another family, another life, another wife. I sat on the bedroom floor surrounded by proof of his betrayal and felt a strange calm. My tears dried, replaced by something colder and more focused. That evening, I called my friend Irina. "I need a good detective," I said without any introduction. "Lisa, what happened?" she asked. "Everything," I replied. "And I'm going to need your help." 3 days later, I was sitting in a cafe across from Anton Petrovich, a former police investigator now working as a private detective. "Are you sure you want to know the truth?" he asked after hearing my story. "Sometimes the truth is worse than not knowing." I looked him straight in the eyes. "The truth is worse than anything I could imagine. Now I need proof." For the next month, Anton Petrovich sent me reports regularly, photos of Dmitri with Valeria, Dmitri with his second family in a luxury neighborhood near St. Petersburg. A copy of their marriage certificate, registered 7 years after ours. The marriage was legally invalid. Financial documents showed signs of fraud, transfers to fake accounts, fake investment schemes involving dozens of people. But the worst was an insurance policy worth 3 million rubles, where the only beneficiary was Valeria. "He built this double life for years," Anton Petrovich explained at our last meeting. "As far as I understand, neither family knows about the other. To the family in St. Petersburg, he says he works in international sales. That's why he's often away." "How is this even possible nowadays?" I asked. "How could he marry again?" "Different regions have different databases," Anton Petrovich said. "If marriages happen in different cities with fake divorce papers, unfortunately, our system isn't perfect. Also, judging by the documents, he used connections." I nodded as I took the thick folder full of evidence. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." As I was leaving, Anton Petrovich called out to me. "Elizaveta Sergeyevna, whatever you plan to do, be careful." I turned with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Oh, I stopped being careful a long time ago. Most people rush into revenge. They act without thinking, make mistakes, and leave themselves open. I wasn't going to make their mistakes. For 2 more months, I played the part of the unsuspecting wife perfectly. I greeted Dmitri with kisses when he returned from trips and listened carefully to his lies about conference calls and client meetings. At the same time, I methodically took apart our life brick by brick. First, the finances. As a lawyer, I knew exactly how to protect myself. I documented everything, made copies, and regularly transferred money to accounts he couldn't access. I consulted Boris Leonidovich, the best divorce lawyer in our firm, showing him proof of my husband's second family, their fake marriage, and his fraud. "This is extraordinary," he said, studying the documents. "In my career, I've rarely seen such a clear case. Besides fraud, there's document forgery, a fake divorce certificate used for the second marriage. That's a serious crime." "I don't just want a divorce," I explained. "I want him to lose everything." The lawyer took off his glasses and looked at me carefully. "Elizaveta Sergeyevna, I understand your pain, but revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people expect." "This isn't about satisfaction," I said. "It's about justice." Next, I formed a group of allies. I carefully chose who to tell: my sister Larissa, my friend Irina, and my colleague Yulia. People I trusted completely and who could help with my plan. "I can't believe he did this," Larissa said, looking at the evidence. "My own brother-in-law, living 2 lives all these years. What are you going to do?" Irina asked. "What's your plan?" I told them, watching their faces change from shock to quiet admiration. "This is huge," Yulia finally said. "And pretty risky. Do you think it'll work?" I asked. They exchanged looks before Larissa spoke. "If anyone can pull this off, it's you." The last piece of the puzzle fell into place when Dmitri mentioned my upcoming 40th birthday. "We should have a party," he suggested one evening. "Something special to mark the date." I looked up from my book. My heart raced, though I stayed calm on the outside. "Sounds great. Maybe you can organize it? Invite all our friends. Make it a surprise." He looked pleased with my enthusiasm, not noticing the cold calculation behind my smile. "Any special wishes?" he asked. "Just one," I said. "I want everyone to remember it, never forget." I needed to see the enemy's face. 3 weeks before my birthday, I took time off and went to St. Petersburg. Thanks to Anton Petrovich's surveillance, I memorized Valeria's schedule. On Fridays after lunch, she worked at the library of gymnasium number 157. I found her exactly where I expected, arranging books in the cozy school library. Pretty, but plain. Chestnut hair in a ponytail. Simple clothes, little makeup. About 8 years younger than me, maybe less. I approached her directly. "Excuse me, are you Valeria?" She looked up with a friendly smile.
Yes.
"How can I help you?" "Looking for something specific." "Actually, I'm writing an article about families where both spouses have careers." I lied smoothly. "One of the teachers said you might share how you balance family life with your husband's constant travel." Her face brightened. "Oh, of course. I'd be happy to help. Though I'm not sure my life is that interesting." We sat at a small table in the corner. I casually turned on the voice recorder on my phone. "Tell me about your family," I asked. "Well, there's me, my husband Dmitry, and our 2 children, Sofia and Artyom," she began, showing photos on her phone. "Dmitry works in international sales, so he's often away. The kids have a hard time, but we manage." "How did you meet?" I asked, keeping my professional smile, though inside I was shaking. "At a conference in Kazan 7 years ago," she said, blushing slightly. "It was so romantic." He was giving a presentation, and there was an instant spark between us. He was just getting divorced then. I nodded encouragingly, trying hard to keep my face neutral.
Divorced?
Of course. What else could he have told her? "We got married pretty quickly. Some people said it was too fast," she continued, "but when you feel it, you just know it's true." "Absolutely," I agreed. "He travels a lot," she said with a sigh. "How often?" "About 2 weeks a month. It's hard, but he's building something important for our future. He says soon he'll travel less and spend more time at home." While she talked, I studied her. There wasn't a hint of lying in her eyes, no sign she was part of a terrible deception. She was just as much a victim as I was. She loved the same lying man I once loved. After half an hour, I finished the interview and thanked her. "It was nice to chat," she said. "Usually, I only talk to my kids. Adult conversation is such a rare thing." As I was leaving, she called out to me. "For which magazine are you writing?" "Deception and Betrayal," I answered without turning around. That night, I sat in my hotel room in St. Petersburg listening to the recording. Tears finally broke through the carefully built dam. Not for Dmitry. I had mourned him long ago, but for Valeria and her children, whose world I was about to destroy. For a moment, I thought, maybe I should just give up, leave everything behind, start over, let them live in peaceful ignorance. But then I remembered the insurance policy with her name on it. Years of lies. A future stolen from me.
No.
They deserved to know the truth just as much as I did, and Dmitry deserved everything coming to him. My birthday was on a Saturday, perfect for what I planned. Dmitry took on the role of party organizer with surprising enthusiasm, confirming my suspicions. He saw an opportunity. About 50 guests were to gather in our spacious garden, colleagues from work, neighbors, old university friends, family. I invited a few business partners too, he mentioned at dinner a week before the event. "You might like to meet them." I smiled. How thoughtful. "Anyone I know?" "No, they're from our St. Petersburg office. But you'll like them, I'm sure." "This St. Petersburg office." "Of course." I nodded gratefully, hiding my racing heart behind a glass of wine. He was finally trying to bring his 2 worlds together, but it would not go the way he planned. The day before the party, I met with my 3 allies for a final check of the plan. "Everything is ready on my side," Yulia confirmed, showing official-looking documents in her briefcase. Though they weren't real legal papers, they looked convincing enough for our purpose. Irina handed me a flash drive. "The presentation is ready. I tested it on an outdoor projector while Dmitry was at work," she said. And I spoke to the special guests, added my sister. They'll arrive right on time. I took a deep breath, looking at the women who had become my salvation in recent months. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. Nervous? Irina asked gently. No, I realized with surprise. I just want it all to be over. In truth, the last days before the celebration were almost too much to handle. I met him at a conference in Kazan 7 years ago, she said, blushing a little. It was so romantic. He was giving a presentation, and there was an instant spark between us. He was just getting divorced then. I nodded, trying to keep my face calm.
Divorced?
Of course. That's what he told her. We got married pretty quickly. Some people said it was too fast, she said. But when you feel it, you just know it's real. Absolutely, I agreed. He travels a lot, she sighed. How often? About 2 weeks a month. It's hard, but he's building something important for our future. He says soon he'll travel less and spend more time at home. While she spoke, I watched her closely. There was no sign of lying in her eyes, no hint she was part of a terrible betrayal. She was just as much a victim as I was. She loved the same lying man I once loved. After half an hour, I finished the interview and thanked her. It was nice talking, she said. Usually, I only talk to my kids. Adult conversation is such a rare thing. As I was leaving, she called out to me. For which magazine are you writing? Deception and Betrayal, I said without turning around. That night, I sat in my hotel room in St. Petersburg listening to the recording. Tears finally broke through my carefully held back emotions. Not for Dmitri. I had mourned him long ago. But for Valeria and her children, whose world I was about to destroy. For a moment, I thought, maybe I should give up, leave everything behind, start over, let them live in peaceful ignorance. But then I remembered the insurance policy with her name on it. Years of lies. A future stolen from me.
No.
They deserved to know the truth just as much as I did, and Dmitri deserved what was coming to him. My birthday was on a Saturday. Perfect for what I had planned. Dmitri threw himself into organizing the party with surprising enthusiasm, which only confirmed my suspicions. He saw an opportunity. About 50 guests were to gather in our spacious garden. Work colleagues, neighbors, old university friends, family. I invited some business partners too, he mentioned at dinner a week before. You might like to meet them. I smiled. How thoughtful. Anyone I know? No. They're from our St. Petersburg office. But you'll like them, I'm sure. The St. Petersburg office. Of course. I nodded, hiding my pounding heart behind a glass of wine. He was finally trying to bring his two worlds together, but it wouldn't go as he planned. The day before the party, I met with my 3 allies for a final check of the plan. Everything's ready on my side, Yulia said, showing some official-looking papers in her briefcase. Though they weren't real legal documents, they looked convincing enough. Irina handed me a flash drive. The presentation is ready. I tested it on an outdoor projector while Dmitri was at work. And I talked to the special guests, my sister added. They'll arrive right on time. I took a deep breath, looking at these women who had become my saving grace in the last months. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. Nervous? Irina asked gently. No, I realized with surprise. I just want it all to be over. In truth, the last days before the party were almost too much to handle. We're all very interested to hear your explanation, I said. It's a misunderstanding, Dmitri replied. His charming smile now looked forced and desperate. Elizabeth and I have been living apart for a long time. The divorce just hasn't been finalized yet, financial reasons, he added. I laughed, a fragile sound in the tense air. Is that your story? Interesting, because here I have our joint tax returns from last year. I nodded to Yulia, who handed me a folder. And here, I continued, are documents for the house you bought in St. Petersburg 6 years ago, with Valeria Kolesnikova. I spread the papers on a nearby table. This was the house he bought while still married to me, though he lived there, not with me, but with her. Valeria stepped forward, her face pale. Dima told me your divorce was finalized 7 years ago, she said. There was no divorce, I told her. Not even a petition was filed. Dmitry and I shared this house, this bed, this life for 14 continuous years. A whisper ran through the crowd. Dmitry's face turned stone cold. He realized there was no easy way out. Valeria, take the kids and wait in the car, he ordered. This is some sick joke, she said. The real joke, I said, is how long you thought you could keep up this act. Then I turned to Valeria. I only found out about you 6 months ago, about your marriage, about the kids. It was all a lie. Valeria stared at Dmitry, tears shining in her eyes. Is it true? You're still married to her? Technically, yes, Dmitry said. Technically, she repeated, unbelieving. We have a marriage certificate. We have kids. So, what makes your marriage invalid? I pressed. Fraud and forged documents, I said. Crimes he used to cover this double life. The children grew uneasy. The girl clung to her mother's dress. The boy looked at Dmitry confused. Daddy, I want you, the boy said. The single word, Daddy, sent a shockwave through the crowd. Several old friends shook their heads in disbelief. I think it's time for the presentation, I announced, nodding to Irina by the projector. The screen came to life with a carefully edited video. Photos of Dmitry and me from 14 years of marriage mixed with dated pictures of him with his second family. Financial documents, money transfers, the fake marriage certificate, the insurance policy. For 7 years, I said as the images changed, Dmitry lived 2 full lives, 2 wives, 2 homes, funding this lie partly with money connected to my family and partly through a financial pyramid scheme. At that moment, Dmitry jerked his head up. That's a lie, right, Boris Leonidovich? Care to explain what we found? My lawyer stepped forward, professional and confident in his expensive suit. In investigating Dmitry Karadunov's finances, we discovered he created an investment scheme using clients from both his legal business and fictitious ones. He promised returns from companies that don't exist. That was our trump card, the lawyer continued. What began as a search for proof of his double life turned into uncovering serious financial crimes. Several cheated investors are here today, he said, pointing to 3 stunned men at the far end of the garden. Clients Dmitry personally invited, unaware I had already contacted them and provided evidence of the fraud. Dmitry suddenly rushed toward me, his face twisted with anger. You planned all this? He shouted. 2 guards, hired by Anton Petrovich, appeared quickly and held him back before he could reach me. Yes, Dimachka, I said calmly, even though my heart was pounding hard in my chest. I planned it just like you planned to juggle 2 families and steal from investors. The next hour played out like a carefully rehearsed dance of destruction. While Dmitry was held, Yulia handed out folders with evidence to the key people, the victims of Valeria's fraud, who had come to support her, and 2 police officers quietly standing by the exit. Valeria sat down on a garden chair. The children cuddled close to her as she tried to understand the shocking truth about her life. I gently approached her, knowing how much pain this caused, even though she was a victim just like me. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, I said softly, but you deserve to know the truth. She looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Did you know about us when I married him? She asked. No, I assured her. I only found out 6 months ago. He told me he was traveling for work. Meanwhile, Dmitry went from angry to desperate, trying to convince the guards and then the police that this was all a big misunderstanding. You can't arrest me, he insisted as handcuffs clicked on his wrists. This is a family matter. One officer pulled out a document with a stamp. We have a court order to detain Dmitry Karadunov. We waited for the right moment, so you wouldn't escape. Forgery of divorce documents and large-scale fraud are not family matters, another officer said calmly. This is a criminal case. Most guests quietly slipped away, though some stayed at the edges, unable to look away from the tragic collapse of what seemed like a perfect life. Larissa came over with a glass of water for Valeria. There's a room prepared in the house where you and the children can be alone, she said. My sister thought you might need a place to process everything. Valeria looked at me in surprise. You arranged a room for us? I knew this would be traumatic, I explained. Especially for the children. I didn't want them to witness everything. While Larissa led them inside, Boris Leonidovich pulled me aside. The police will need statements from you and from Valeria Kolesnikova and Karadanova. Legally, Dmitry is being held on charges of fraud and forging divorce documents. I nodded, watching as Dmitry was led to the waiting police car. His face was ashen gray. Our eyes met as he was helped into the back seat. I expected hate, or maybe a plea for mercy. Instead, I saw something else, a flash of respect, maybe even admiration for how thoroughly I had planned his downfall. He gave me a small, ironic bow before climbing into the car. The party, my 40th birthday celebration, was basically over. The catering staff quietly packed up the food and equipment. The lights that once felt festive now cast eerie shadows over the empty tables. Irina found me sitting alone at the head table. In front of me was an untouched glass of champagne. Did you do this? She asked simply as she sat down. I did. I agreed, still looking toward where the police car had gone. Then why don't I feel any better? She covered my hand with hers because revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just stops the bleeding. We sat quietly for a while before I finally raised my glass. To 40 years and a new beginning. The days after my birthday blurred together in a mix of police statements, legal meetings, and media questions. My husband's double life became a local sensation. His fraud scheme was bigger than I thought, almost 15 million rubles lost and more than 20 victims. I stayed away from the media, hiding in a small rented apartment I had prepared months before. My sister stayed with me during those first hard nights when sleep was scarce and doubts crept in the dark hours. Did I do the right thing? I asked her one night over a bottle of wine. These kids will grow up with their father in jail. But even if he was free, they would still grow up with a liar and thief as a father, she said. At least now Valeria can build an honest life for them. Speaking of Valeria, she surprised me by contacting me a week after the party. We met in a quiet cafe, both nervous and unsure. I needed to see you, she said as we sat down with our coffee, to understand everything. What do you want to know? I asked. When did you start to suspect? What gave him away? I told her about the phone call I overheard, the investigation that followed, and how I found her and the children. I interviewed you once, I admitted. In the school library. Her eyes grew wide. An article for a magazine. I knew you looked familiar, but back then you were blonde. Then she suddenly laughed, short and painful. God, we were such fools. Not fools, I corrected her. Victims. There's a difference. We talked for hours, comparing notes about the man we both loved. The same birthday gifts he gave to both of us. The same romantic words. Even some mutual friends who surely knew about both families but stayed silent. I keep asking myself how I didn't see it, Valeria said. There were signs, I said. Calls he didn't take when I was around. Weekends when he was unreachable. I just trusted him. Me too, she whispered. After we parted, she took my hand. Thank you. Not for what you did, but for letting me know the truth. Meanwhile, Dmitry's legal troubles grew like a snowball. Bail was denied because of a flight risk, so he awaited trial in jail. His lawyer, a sharp man in an expensive suit, kept contacting me about a possible deal. What kind of deal? I asked, not hiding my doubt. Boris Leonidovich adjusted his cuff, as if it would soften what he was about to say. A pre-trial agreement. Dmitry admits guilt, gives all documents to investigators, reveals the scheme, and names accomplices. In return, he asks for a lighter sentence. Maybe 6 or 7 years instead of 10. And what does my agreement have to do with this? I asked, my voice catching. Your victims. Your statements, refusal, or support for the deal are important for the court. Also, you can set conditions, money returned, giving up some property, or insisting on full compensation. And if I agree? My voice was softer than I wanted. Then we include your demands in the agreement. If he meets them before the trial, it counts in his favor. He paused, then added, honestly, He's more afraid of his reputation than the sentence. Fraud sounds worse than forged documents. In the press, he's already a villain, 2 families, fake investments. The deal is his chance to save face. I thought about it all night before deciding. In the morning, I called Boris Leonidovich. Tell his lawyer I'll agree, but on one condition, I said. If Dmitry signs the papers giving up his parental rights and Valeria gets full custody of the children, I told Boris Leonidovich my condition. He asked, surprised, "Are you sure? That's too easy for him." "It's not about him," I said. "It's about the kids. They deserve a chance at a normal life." 2 days later, Valeria called me. Her voice was shaking with emotion. He signed the papers. Something inside me hardened when I heard this last proof of Dmitry's true character. Even his own children were just pieces in his game. "What will you tell them when they grow up?" I asked. After a long pause, she answered, "The truth, in a way they can understand. That their father made bad choices that hurt people, including them. That he is paying for those choices. And it's not their fault." That night, for the first time in months, I fell asleep without dreaming about Dmitry. My 41st birthday was simple, just like I wanted. No party, no show, just dinner with close friends in my new apartment in the Garden District. The past year changed me so much I was still discovering new parts of myself. After the divorce was finalized, surprisingly simple under the circumstances, I left my corporate law job and started working for a nonprofit that helps women rebuild their lives after trauma. The smaller salary meant moving from our country estate to a modern apartment with city lights view. It felt like freedom, not loss. To new beginnings, Irina toasted after dinner. And to true friends, I added, looking at the small group who had supported me all this time. After everyone left, I sat alone on the balcony, watching the city below. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Happy birthday, Elizaveta. I underestimated you. My mistake."
D.
Somehow, Dmitry had found a way to contact me from prison. I wasn't surprised. He was always clever. I deleted the message without replying and blocked the number. He no longer had power over my thoughts or feelings. The sentencing hearing happened without me. Dmitry got 10 years for fraud. I didn't attend, saying goodbye to that chapter of my life. The next morning, I met Valeria for our now monthly coffee. She and the kids had moved back to her hometown, Nizhny Novgorod, where she works as a kindergarten teacher and slowly heals. Yesterday, my daughter asked about her dad. She shared, stirring her latte. She wanted to know if bad people can become good again. "And what did you tell her?" I asked. "That everyday people make choices, and I believe people can change if they really want to." She smiled sadly. "I don't know if Dmitry will ever change, but I want her to believe in redemption." I nodded, understanding her wisdom. "How are you?" "Some days are harder than others," she admitted. "But we manage. The kids are strong." "Oh, and by the way, I'm dating again," she added with a smile. "That's wonderful," I said, truly happy for her. "Do you have someone special?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Right now, I'm focusing on myself. Learning who I am without Dmitry defining me." We hugged goodbye, something that seemed impossible a year ago. 2 women connected by betrayal, but refusing to let it define them. That evening, I got a big envelope. Inside was a legal document. Dmitry had signed over his share of an investment portfolio worth nearly 20 million rubles. There was a note attached. "For whatever it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just that I got caught, but for what I did. You deserved better, Dmitry." I stood in the kitchen, staring at his familiar handwriting. Was it real regret, or just another trick? Did it even matter? After thinking hard, I decided to give all the money to an education fund for Sofia and Artyom. Dmitry had stolen their father. The least I could do was help secure their future. Watching the sunset from my balcony that night, I realized something important. The woman who planned that detailed revenge on her birthday was not who I was becoming. That Elizaveta fed on pain and betrayal, even if her actions were justified. This new Elizaveta, sipping wine and watching stars light up the city, was finding a different path. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe understanding, and definitely strength. I lost my husband but found myself. That, I realized, was the deepest revenge of all. Over the years, my birthday story became more like a legend, not about the drama of betrayal and exposure, but about how I turned my pain into purpose. My work with the nonprofit grew. I started creating programs to help women rebuild their lives after big personal betrayals, financial, emotional, or marital. Each case was different, but the goal was the same: to take control of their own stories again. Valeria and I stayed in touch, not all the time, but on birthdays and sharing rare updates about life. At first, our talks were careful. We both walked on thin ice. It helped that we both went to therapy, each with our own psychologist. Step by step, we learned to separate Dimitri's guilt from our own feelings and stopped fighting each other. Her kids thrived. Sofia became a talented musician. Artyom showed promise in math. They knew the basic truth about their father, but weren't consumed by his mistakes. Dimitri served 8 years of a 12-year sentence before being released early on parole. I heard through mutual friends that he worked as an accountant after. His old professional connections were gone forever. His fall was dramatic, but it was no longer about him. It was about me, about Valeria, about moving forward. 5 years after that fateful birthday, I met Mikhail, a widower who understood loss and renewal. Our relationship was built on honesty, respect, and the shared understanding that life rarely goes as planned. During our first serious talk, I told him everything about Dimitri, about that time, about my journey. That must have been incredibly hard, Mikhail said quietly, holding my hand. Yes, I agreed, but I'm not the same woman anymore. I'm the one who survived, who grew. 2 years later, at our wedding, Valeria was my maid of honor, a friend who understood the complex fabric of survival. Sofia played a beautiful piece. She wrote herself on the violin during the ceremony. Life, I learned, is not about perfect revenge, it's about perfect resilience.